So welcome to the second webinar towards the launching of the Mediterranean Forest Research Agenda that will take place in Barcelona at the end of November of this month. So my name is Magda Budager Kharrat. I'm the principal scientist at EFIMED. So EFIMED is the Mediterranean facility of the European Forest Institute. It's an international organization established by European states. The Convention on EFI was ratified by 30 European states, and we have more than 130 associate and affiliate members organizations in 42 countries. Our headquarters is in Joensuu, Finland, and we have offices in Bonn, Brussels, Rome, and Barcelona, as well as project offices in Malaysia and China. EFI core business is connecting knowledge to action. 10 years ago, EFIMED prepared the first Mediterranean Forest Research Agenda, 2010. For the preparation of the next one, Mediterranean Forest Agenda 2030, we engaged the network of the Mediterranean Forest Institute and the broader Mediterranean community. The process resulted in defining 4 priority areas to be established in the next decade. Those 4 themes are the themes for the 4 webinars that you can see on the screen. We had the first webinar last week, and today is the second one. Those themes are the themes of the 4 webinars, and they will be reflecting on the 4 scientific papers that EFIMED commissioned. The papers review the past decade achievement against the previous research priorities. At the same time, look to where attention should be focused for the next 10 years. The webinars offer the opportunity to explore the 4 priority areas to identify research and geographical gaps and discuss the challenges for implementation in our countries. The result of those webinars will feed the discussion during the EFI Mediterranean Network Forum, end of November here in São Paulo, in Barcelona. To prepare those webinars, all EFIMED team was mobilized. So thank you for the team present today in this room, but also we are supported by the Mediterranean Youth Task Force of SilvaMed, FAO. We have with us today Rhea, Leila, Hiba, Mustafa, and Federica, and they will be facilitating the breakout rooms later on. So in order to be more interactive, we will be using a Miro board. So what you are seeing today, this is the board we are working on. And at some point, you will be invited to scan QR codes to reply to some questions. And the result of the discussion will be put on this board. So if you want to join this board, navigate it and see, for example, who is in the room, you can go and see this map and zoom in and see who is participating from each country. To access this board, Sarah put already in the chat the link for the Miro board. So you just click on this link, enter your email and the password, and then you can access and navigate over this board and see who is attending. So you don't have the right to write and modify things, which is normal. You are so many joining us today, but you can see, navigate on the slide and see also resources we put for you, like some papers on which we built to feed the discussion today, but also some resources on projects and some videos. So today we have the facilitation of this webinar will be done by Cecilia Fraccaroli, a junior researcher in EFI. She will be facilitating the webinar. Cecilia, can you hear us? Are you with us today?
Yes, here I am.
Okay. So Cecilia, the mouse is yours.
Thank you very much, Magda, and thanks for welcoming us. It's very nice to see so many people joining this meeting. And yes, well, I have the pleasure to introduce you to our speaker today, Joan Pino, who will give us a presentation about the paper published by Peñuelas and Sardanas, with the title of Global Change and Forest Disturbances in the Mediterranean Basin, Breakthroughs, Knowledge Gaps and Recommendations. Joan Pinon is the director of CREAF. He's a doctor in biology from the University of Barcelona and professor in ecology at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. And he has extensive experience in scientific work focusing on landscape ecology, structure, and dynamics, and has a wide expertise in Mediterranean and Catalan ecosystems. So I think it's very good to set the floor for our discussion today. And well, I think, Joan Pino, you can share your screen and start your presentation. Yeah, it would be wonderful if you can take it in 25 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. And let me share the presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start then. That's the paper. It's a review paper on global change and forest disturbances in the Mediterranean basin, breakthroughs, knowledge gaps, and recommendations. And just let me start by a short summary of the paper. This is is a paper review of recent literature that indicates large direct and indirect impacts especially of increasing drought conditions on the forests of the Mediterranean basin, the changes in surface and distribution areas, and the main impacts that they have suffered. These drought conditions are in combination with other factors like overexploitation, pest expansion, fire and soil degradation, to synergistically driving to forest degradation and dieback in several areas. This is the main result of this review, and that these environmental changes are triggering responses in tree morphology, physiology, growth, reproduction, and mortality. Let me also start with some introduction to the Mediterranean biome. Focus in the paper is highlighted that Mediterranean basin is especially sensitive to climate change. Is considered one of our climate change hotspots in the Earth, due to nature of transition between arid and temperate regions. Chateaubriand in the 18th century, I am not wrong, considered that Mediterranean is just the transition from forest to desert, and that's quite true in this context of increasing droughts. This increase in aridity in the region has widely demonstrated through the last decades. The paper is plenty of references stating this process. And so just to give some specific data, there has been a temperature increase in the last century of almost 1 degree Celsius in the Earth, but 1.3 in the Mediterranean area compared to 1890, 1920 period. And the problem is that the aridity is even projected to increase in the future, with a 3-4 degrees increase in temperature and 20% decrease in rainfall in forested areas for the worst provisions of climatic change in the last report. Even worse, the Mediterranean forests face especially hard situation regarding soils. Mediterranean soils are often deficient in nutrients, especially on nitrogen and phosphorus, and this low fertility is especially critical in forests because of their higher demand for water and nutrients. Moreover, the effects of higher CO2 levels which are increasing the level of carbon fixation, are also increasing foliar composition and phosphorus and nitrogen contents because of increasing demand in these nutrients, and further decreasing nutrient availability in the future. Regarding forests, we know that Mediterranean Basin is a global biodiversity hotspot in Europe. Also, regarding forest types, it's very diverse in forest types, and forests are estimated to cover 10% of the total land in the region, the basin, with 25 million hectares of forest and 50 million of other woodlands. And this forested area is still increasing because the Mediterranean forests have recently increased by 2%. Despite forest degradation and vulnerability is also increasing. And this increase in forests in the last century is mainly due to land use change processes, mainly due to forest regeneration in old crop and all farm areas, which were recently abandoned. Also, because of the recent application of the Common Agricultural Policy. Climatic models are projecting an area loss of these forests of about 11–25% by the end of this century because of desertification. Yet, Mediterranean climate could also expand towards northeastern in Europe, so giving some opportunities for forest increase in the case of Mediterranean forests at the expense of temperate forests. And finally, Mediterranean forest is still, despite all these challenges, is still a global carbon sink. This is a picture of the distribution of Mediterranean forests published by the State of the Environment and Development in the Mediterranean in 2009, in which we can see the heterogeneous distribution of forests, mostly concentrated in western north rim, but with significant forest areas in the eastern and in the north, in the southern rim of the Mediterranean. This study has a set of objectives which are listed below. The first was to identify the current status of the diverse human and natural disturbances in Mediterranean forests over recent decades. Also identify the main cause of the changes in these forested areas responsible for the current situation. That also can provide insights for the future for facing the challenges in the region. The studies also aimed at proposing actions that could help improve the survival and the status of this forest biome in the Mediterranean basin. And finally, to identify issues that help advance our knowledge for obtaining a global overview of the present and future evolution of this biome. This is a picture of the paper with the distribution of the study sites. There's a large number of study sites. The number is not specified, with some concentration of study sites in two regions in the Iberian Peninsula, in southern Spain, Andalusia, and in the northeastern Spain, in Catalonia. There are some insights summarized by the paper. The first point is this a set of several concurrent risks that have been identified by the paper. And the first and the most important, the larger threat of the present and future aridity is perhaps the most acknowledged, the most identified risk in the works reviewed. Dieback defoliation and lower growth in European Mediterranean forests are mostly due to increasing droughts, which often interact with higher temperatures and pathogenic attacks, and all associated with further decreases in nutrient cycling rates, changes to soil trophic wave structure, and lower soil fertility. So with a set of concurrent risks, mostly combined with aridity. Annual growth and set production in this forest is associated to annual drought intensity, so it's expected to decrease with increasing aridity. And this observed tree dieback under drought condition is mostly associated with some physiological processes like the depletion of reserves of non-structural carbohydrates in the tree, also to a general increase in tree dormancy, and also to a decrease in gross primary production. Mediterranean trees in the distribution, in the current distribution in the studied area, are frequently at the limit of their capacity of positive net primary production. So this will complicate the survival of these trees with further increases in aridity. And finally, that several Mediterranean forested areas are on steep slopes, and this gives additional risks for affecting these trees, because these forests in steep slopes with thin soils are still more sensitive to drought as observed in general climates. There's also another risk identified by the review is that drought can limit the potential response to rising atmospheric CO2 concentrations. So some management measures like increasing patchiness can increase the capacity of forests to resist future drought. And also that the situation of Mediterranean forests associated to global warming is especially critical in the southern Mediterranean rim. There, the impact of drought aridity has been especially intense from since 50 years ago to now. And this affectation is especially intense in several areas where it is combined with overgrazing pressure, crop expansion, urbanization, that leads to an increasing wood exploitation in many cases. Another associated risk to aridity is that drought is currently shaping the structure of Mediterranean forests. In particular, there is some trend to shrub expansion at the expense of forests because of their higher capacity to adapt and resist intensive droughts. The impact of drought on the foliation and dieback can also affect asymmetrically species and individual trees. For example, shorter trees are more resistant and resilient to increases in drought than taller trees, even within the same species, but also between species. And also the effects of drought on the fitness of various species of Mediterranean forest trees seems to be much more detrimental to mesic than to more xeric species. So there is a selection of xeric species for associated to this increase in drought. However, all these results are not conclusive, because many works report contrasting results. Another associated risk to drought is increasing of grazing pressure. Disturbance by livestock and overexploitation has increased, and this aggravates the negative effect of the reduction in natural precipitation. This kind of disturbance is especially common in savanna woodlands and dehesas, where the Mediterranean evergreen genus Quercus is dominant. And this livestock pressure is, however, decreasing in large parts of the Mediterranean, especially in the northern Mediterranean rim. This is driving to the appearance of dense pioneer forests going hand in hand with the loss of plant and other components of biodiversity, especially regarding gap colonizing species. So the report, the review reports decrease in plant diversity, but it's also acknowledged that the other species of biodiversity components like birds and insects are also affected by this afforestation in the northern Mediterranean rim. The increase in aridity and in climate warming is also helping to promoting the pest in forests. Increasing heat waves, warming, and droughts have been associated with pathogens in Mediterranean forests. This is an example of pine processionary moth, which is increasing its altitude range because of climate warming. Another example is the infestation by Phytophthora species, especially Phytophthora cinnamomi, which is currently affecting Quercus iles and Quercus suberforest in southern Europe, in the southernmost part of Europe. And this is, according to the review results, favored by warmer temperatures and increased aridity. And this decline is also concurrent with losses in soil biological activity and nutrient availability, which are behind fungus proliferation. And these attacks also are intense in some forests of southern rim in North Africa region. This is also the case of insect outbreaks, which have strong impacts on the Mediterranean trees, affecting their resistance to drought. This is the case of Lymantria dispar or Tomicus species, which have largely affected forests in Spain, for example. We have to remember also that there are a set of non-Mediterranean forest islands in the Mediterranean region, which are especially being affected by this increasing in aridity and warming. Microclimatic conditions driven by topographic features in the Mediterranean allow the establishment of sub-Mediterranean temperate and even boreal forests. This is the case of the Pyrenees and other Mediterranean mountains in which we can find boreal forests. However, because of the higher resilience to drought of Mediterranean species, they are expanding into these forest islands, just becoming more Mediterranean than in the past. And there are clear and increasing symptoms of declining crowns and increasing defoliation and mortality in these non-Mediterranean species in non-Mediterranean islands, as is the case of Pinus sylvestris in southern Spain, for example. And this process is especially frequent in stands at low altitudes. And also these effects of drought have been largely detrimental to the populations of those species in the border of their distribution area. This is the case, for example, of fagus, of beach populations in the southernmost areas of their distribution. This dieback and substitution of temperate and boreal forests by Mediterranean ones is even faster where brushing pressure by ungulates is high, as in southern Spain, but also in North Africa with species like Cetrus atlantica. Some words on species invasion. The study highlights that forests are generally not a little invade habitat, particularly in Europe and in the Mediterranean basin. So they are not especially affected by species invasion. However, in some cases, these forests can be especially affected by invasions. This is the case of peri-urban forests, which are especially vulnerable to invasion due to presence of activity of humans. Moreover, there are some species that have been intentionally introduced and spread for afforestation and silvicultural management, like acacia, eucalyptus, robinia, and ailanthus. They still persist in large number in the Mediterranean. And there's also a warning message, that is that further increase in aridity and on nutrient deposition will favor the spread of some current invasive forest species in the Mediterranean basin. Another point, risk of relevance is related to soil fragility. Low and irregular precipitation in the Mediterranean is a main factor limiting tree establishment and growth under Mediterranean conditions, which is particularly harmful in areas where the soil has a poor capacity to retain water for historical reasons. There is an unstable balance between the trees and soil water contents in the Mediterranean, also associated with anthropogenic historical and current actions on which affected forest and forest estate and which led to changes in floristic compositions and also to soil degradation and fertility loss. Difficulties in regenerating forests after clear cutting or fire accelerates the conversion of forests to pastures, to degraded areas, and also to desertification, thus complicating forest sustainability. So there is, to this problem caused by increasing aridity, there is also an associated problem of soil degradation, which affects synergistically to climate change, forest status and sustainability. The quality of soil then is key in ensuring the health and regenerative capacity of Mediterranean forests, and in turn, forests are the best type of land cover for maintaining this soil quality. Finally, some words about land use change processes. There is the abandonment of rural areas in the Mediterranean has been especially intense in the last 80, 100 years. And this abandonment has been associated with increasing forest cover. And there's a large number of secondary forests in the initial and medium stages of successions, which frequently have poor edge structure, non-adequate density, low diversity, and low maturity, and this and they also are quite prone to wildfires. I think it's an important statement of the review is that high biodiversity in the Mediterranean biome is the outcome of the coexistence of early and late successional forests. Just to sum up, the review identified 7 main causes of changes in changes in forests in the last 3 decades. The first, the most important, the direct effect of increasing aridity due to more frequent and prolonged droughts, and intense too. The second is the indirect effect of droughts, mainly by the spread of pests and fires. The third is the direct and indirect effects of human activity associated with environmental degradation, fire, species invasion, and pollution. The fourth is the persistent and even increasing human pressure and intense management of water resources. The fifth is the coexistence of this intense management with a cropland abandonment in the northern Mediterranean rim, without adequate management policies of new forests. The sixth is the very high pressure on forests in the southern Mediterranean rim, coupled with demographic pressure, crop and livestock expansion, and water overexploitation. And the seventh is the scarcity and inequality of human management and policies which are unable to counteract these previous changes. The study also reviews how can EFI Mediterranean forest health and conservation, a set of practices that can help Mediterranean forest health and conservation. The first is that some actions in the landscape, like the maintenance of forest patches with croplands in rural areas, that can be suitable management strategies for maintaining forest health and biodiversity. A second one is an appropriate management of livestock and logging, ensuring the equal representation of different stages of forest succession among forest patches, and helping them to maintain the diversity of woody plant and forest services among landscapes. The third one is the extensive management of livestock as a potential alternative tool for maintaining biodiversity and avoiding the risk of fire in Mediterranean landscape, which is even so under debate. Moreover, reforestation and afforestation are the most direct human actions that can counteract the progressive degradation of forests in Mediterranean landscapes, especially in the southern rim. We have to use nursery species that provide shade that allowing the replantation of late succession of forests, for example. They can be used mulches and organic amendment and soil conditioners with water-absorbing polymers, favoring the early establishment of tree seedlings, especially in most degraded areas. And there's also the need for an appropriate management to maintain Mediterranean forests in their current structure and areas with an adequate level of thinning after fire, enhancing forest regeneration and controlling fuel load, and conserving a specific amount and density of lodging remnants after a fire for a conservation of biodiversity, for example. The review also identifies integrative approaches as the most efficient measure to prevent fire, ensure adequate forest cover, maintaining forest quality, and favoring regeneration. It also identifies the need of apply an optimal and moderate forest thinning and livestock pressure, but also the need to maintain an adequate proportion of croplands in the landscape, and to maintain the socioeconomic conditions for rural populations. So to avoid depopulation, for protecting rural Mediterranean landscapes and Mediterranean forests too. And it's especially important to account for the different realities in the northern and southern Mediterranean rims. Let me end with some final conclusions. The first, aridity is the main climatic constraint for Mediterranean forests that should be considered in the management. Drought-driven alteration can become stronger if climate change, its associated disturbances, and changes in other components of global change continue at current rates or are enhanced. We also need to know more about the properly managing forests to increase their resistance to drought and the interacting disturbances. Little is known, for example, about improving soil conditions to ensure a good supply of nutrients. Land use planning is also a key pending question in several areas of the Mediterranean basin. There's also the need of performing strong alliances to avoid depopulation in rural forested areas and unmanaged secondary forest expansion in the Mediterranean Europe, and on the other hand, to control population expansion and forest overexploitation and loss in North Africa. All the data collected in the review strongly suggest that maintaining biodiversity, as well as a variety of goods and services from cropland and forested areas, will be necessary to reach these objectives, combining forest patches of different sizes, including the most appropriate crops for maintaining environmental quality and food security, and promoting sustainable economic sources for the maintenance of an optimal human density. The management of these forest areas should incorporate also a hierarchical landscape planning at different scales, including a large-scale plan, even for the entire region, that considers the combination of areas of different types, multiple users, and the effects of disturbances and especially drought. But also including a local scale action plans such as the improvement of stakeholder education and tools availability for an adequate management of their territories. Let me finish with this graphical summary in which we try to exemplify and give. I want to give thanks to Magda for the provision of this animation. We start with a Mediterranean forest, which is moving to northern latitudes and higher altitudes to become, which become more Mediterranean than in the past. And this Mediterranean forest will be also affected in the future by increasing aridity and soil degradation, and by a set of associated factors like fire increase, overgrazing, and pests. This affectation will also affect these factors will also affect the continuity of Mediterranean forests in its current area, and even its conversion. It will drive its conversion to shrubland and savanoid landscapes, low-tard shrublands, or even to semi-arid steppes in relation to the intensity, frequency of this disturbance. Human management has to fight against these trends with inadequate livestock management and with reforestation and afforestation practices to promote diverse landscapes with forest patches of different size, with which allow some re-establishment and conversion of these degraded areas into Mediterranean forests. And that's all. Thank you very much, and I return the floor.
Thank you very much, Joan, for setting the scenes on the resilience of the Mediterranean forest. It was very nice to see this overview of the main challenges and risk, and also with some best practices. Now it's time for questions and answers. So I would like to invite all the participants of the webinar to pose their question direct to Joan, specifically about the presentation. So you can either raise your hand or write your questions in the chat. You are also welcome to pose your question in Spanish, French, or Italian. Yeah, I see already we have some raised hands. So
or in Catalan.
Or in Catalan, of course. Thank you. Yes, we have Trinka message. Please, you can open your mic and pose your question.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have one doubt or comment, question, whatever, in regards to maybe the whole webinar is, in your presentation, you showed a map of Mediterranean forests, and I think we need to define what are we talking about, because on your map there were countries that belong to Mediterranean, but the forest is not that it was extracted the area that would be considered as Mediterranean forests. For example, I'm from Croatia, so I've seen you. It was on a map the forest for whole Croatia, which belongs to 3 different climates, and not all of it would be. Basically, there was no shown of Mediterranean forests part in the map. But when I look at other countries, it's the same thing. So I think we need to define in general, what are we talking in this webinar? Which area are we covering, at least roughly? And the second thing is in regards to the reforestation and with the management of the Mediterranean forests. One of the issue in Croatia is, I think it's coming in many parts as well, that when you reforest the Mediterranean forests, usually you do it with pine trees, and then the pine tree is more, it has more, it's more sensible to the fire, and never again you basically recover it with the natural forest types. And one more comment on your paper. Most of the examples that you were analyzing and showing are from the western part of the Mediterranean, and for example, in Croatia you have 1 point, and in most of the other part of the Mediterranean, basically there was no data. I'm not saying that this is not relevant. The similar are thing, but it's just a comment. How can we amend the data and get some kind of more comprehensive overview? Yeah, thank you. Sorry if I was too long.
Okay, let me answer. Can I? Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the comment. I think it's a very pertinent comment, because the Mediterranean is a very heterogeneous region. It's a transition region from temperate to desert area, and this gives a big high complexity, even increased by the circumstance that is a very highly region with altitude gradients superimposed to this general latitudinal gradient. Well, the review is regarding the Mediterranean basin. I think it's quite relevant, because the Mediterranean basin is the region in which we can apply policies. Policies should be done at country or super country level. So this identification of the entire Mediterranean basin with different countries, not totally included in the Mediterranean biome, and even with the largest part of them out of the Mediterranean region, like is the case of France, I think it's a good start. That's obvious that it's difficult. We should define what is our focus regarding Mediterranean forest, but I'm afraid that this is not easy, because we can identify some temperate deciduous broadleaf forests as non-Mediterranean ones. But what to do with semi-deciduous forests, sub-Mediterranean forests, with, for example, with deciduous oak, which are in the border area between the temperate and Mediterranean, and even regarding some pine forests in mountain areas, which can be considered well, non-typically Mediterranean, but non-boreal. For example, Pinus sylvestris forest in southern Spain, or some habeas forest in southern Spain, or in Italy, or in Greece, or even the cedar forests in the Lebanon, or in the Morocco. That's difficult. I think it's a challenge, but it's also a good opportunity for facing the future threats, because these areas will be Mediterranean in the near future. And then I think it's good they are part of the Mediterranean policy for forests, while acknowledging that they are non-typically Mediterranean. No, I don't. That's my opinion. And regarding the second question about reforestation or afforestation, that's a spiny question in the Mediterranean, especially, and I think it's because of this high heterogeneity in environmental conditions. In some areas in southern Mediterranean, for example, in Anatolia or in southern Spain, is mandatory to restore forests in many areas. but not in many other areas in Northern Mediterranean Rim, in which we have too much forest. And this is affecting biodiversity conservation, and it is affecting wildfire risk policies. So I think it's part of the complexity of the region, but in some cases we have to plant pine trees because the degradation, the extreme degradation of some soils and the extreme aridity of many areas doesn't allow any other trees. And in other cases we can go beyond. I think it's needed to develop a specific plan and to develop the different strategies for different cases, and then to leave some more some room for the specific policies for specific cases.
Thanks, Joan. Indeed, I think it's very important to conduct research at local level and be aware of the trade-offs and the synergies between different risks and management practices. Very relevant point. And I will now give the word to Rakid Khedaki. Has a raised hand. If you want to pose your question, please.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for this talk. I have two little comments or questions. The first one, yes, I agree with you that drought is very important, and I would like to stress 2 points. The first one is that, can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. The first point is that climate models tend to show that there will be a change in the season length. So yes, drought is important, but what we observe from model simulations is that the length of the season will change, and therefore, instead of having, for instance, I don't know, say 2 or 3 weeks or 1 month of drought, this might come probably longer. So this is one point for drought, but there is another point. The recurrent. Yes, this is interesting. And the other thing that I have also observed is the recurrence of this drought event. To be how to say clear for I have been working on the Atlas cedars in Morocco, and what we observe is that, for instance, if we have 2 or 3 years of drought, then Atlas cedars can cope with it, and they can sprout, and you can have some seedlings. But if you have recurrent droughts like 2 or 3 years in a row, and then immediately another 2 or 3 years in a row, and so on, you might kill the whole population. So I think in terms of drought, there are different aspects of the drought. This is one comment, and since I have the microphone, I would like to make another comment that is related also to the forests in Morocco. And as it has been said, I would like to stress the resources that can be allocated per country. If we are dealing with rich countries like Spain or France or Italy, there is a certain amount per inhabitant that is much that is much higher than in the southern rim, and therefore, for these past years, fire has been increasing in Morocco. There are pests also, and there is drought and all these events. And I have been talking with the foresters in Morocco, and this is a very important issue. I mean, no matter what the how to say the science can tell or can show or can provide as advices, it cannot be totally 100% applicable in all countries. If a country can devote only a little money to manage the forests, then we have to adapt our science to manage the forest in these countries. So I think we have to have the resources component in our science. Thank you. Sorry if I have been too long.
Thanks. John,
What?
if you want to react.
Yes, well, absolutely agree. And I think it's your comments are very pertinent. That the effect, the impact of droughts is very large, and there is a large number of dimensions of these droughts that should be taken into account: intensity, frequency, and extent, not only in the space but also in time. So the extension, the time length of this drought, and also it's especially extremely variable across the Mediterranean, because the environmental conditions are also extremely variable, not only because of climate but also because of the orography and other factors. And I think it's important to be aware, to take it into account, and I think it's important to have a common Mediterranean forest plan, including the different realities, but not only because of environmental factors, but also to socio-economic factors. We have two big realities of forest increase in Northern Mediterranean and forest decrease. Let me simplify. And forest decrease in the Southern Mediterranean rim and in Western Mediterranean rim, and this is because of different climatic and socio-environmental conditions, and should be addressed both. And for me, it's especially important to understand, to address what is happening in the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean rim, because they are the future. They are showing us a little future in the Mediterranean region. And I think it's important to stress this idea to policymakers, especially in Northern Mediterranean rim, to look at the South as a future scenario. And I think for Europe, Mediterranean is also a future scenario. So it's important to look at the South from Europe and from Northern Mediterranean rim for addressing these challenges in the future.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's very nice. I'm very happy that we are zooming in the Northern African area. And indeed, I think we might have a participants from that conducted a study about the historical trends of Citrus atlantica. They call it Daniel Abel Schat. And he was looking at the historical trend of this species to understand the reasons for its depletion. So if Daniel is here, I would like to invite him to shortly explain us the results of his research and what are the lessons learned from his study, and which knowledge we have about the history of the species. I'm not sure if still in the meeting. Otherwise, I think is.
If he's not there, he's a colleague of mine, so I can say a few words if you want, but that's fine. Okay,
yes.
So yeah, I'm paleoecologist too. Sorry if I'm taking the microphone too much. Just cut me.
We have 1 minute left, so if you can keep it short, would be great.
Yeah. Okay. So
okay,
the study that Danny did with his colleagues in Granada and myself, we took some cores from Morocco near the Atlas cedars forests, and we looked at the pollen content. And these pollen contents show, for many of them in Morocco, that there is a decreasing trend since 2000. So it's different from how to say an assessment from the IUCN. This is from pollen data, and it shows that since 2000 we are losing more and more populations, and this trend is clear. And in some areas in the Rif where Danny and colleagues worked, we showed that there are some populations that have already disappeared in there, and this threat in the Rif will extend to the Middle Atlas and very probably to the High Atlas. So the whole populations in Morocco And all polling records in Morocco tend to show that there is this tendency, or this trend, sorry, to a decrease of the number of populations and their coverage. Yes, exactly what you're showing on the screen here. This is based on the pollen data from fossil records in the Rift Mountains. This is from the Rift Mountains, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for this overview. It was very pertinent. And we have time for one last question that was posed in the chat by Tarek Khan Tipu. I will just read it because we have very little time. So he's asking if the current forest management strategy is the main reason for forest fire. And he's bringing also the example of Portugal, where the reliance on production forestry and the emphasis of eucalyptus are causing a wide biodiversity crisis. So if you can have a quick comment on this.
Yeah, we can say that yes, but there are some debate on this because we need also pine plantations, and there are some areas in which not only eucalyptus but also Pinus radiata or other species have been used intensively used for timber production and for silviculture, and yeah, that could be affecting the biodiversity and could be increasing the fire risk. There's also other situations like in some French regions, but this is under debate also, which is also an effect. Is this a clear effect or not in some cases?
Perfect. Thank you very much. And thanks again for your presentation and for such a great
Thank
discussion.
Thank you to you.
Thanks. Now we will move the focus on the Mediterranean research agenda. And you can already see in the screen that Magda is sharing what are the questions, the key research questions that we have identified on the resilience in the Mediterranean ecosystem. So we want to now do a kind of interactive exercise or an online survey with all of you using Mentimeter. And you will have the chance to answer to these questions and to say how relevant they are in your country. And we would like to ask you to connect to Menti by scanning the QR code that you can see in the screen. You can use your phone and just scan the QR code. Alternatively, you can also go to the website menti.com and insert this voting code, menti.com. I will repeat it. The code is in the screen. And yes, there you will have access to the survey, and we will go through some questions. Okay, so the first question, I hope you are all connected. Otherwise, please write in the chat if you have any problems. And Magda is already sharing the screen with the answers that will come up. And the first question is, where are you from? So please, you can write in the Menti the country you are from. Maybe we can share the link once more with the code in the chat to make sure that everyone.
Cecilia, this code appearing now on the screen is a good one. So if they entered menti.com, enter this code, please.
85855114. And we can see some participants. Right, very nice. I see already many participants are indicating where they are from, and it's nice to see there is a strong participation from Spain, Portugal, and Italy, and then also the rest of the basin is also well represented. And it's even a very international participation. We had already around 22 responses. And maybe we can wait a bit longer as we have around 50 people in the meeting. And if you still have problems accessing the Menti, please write in the chat. Our colleagues can help you. Yes, I think we have to first solve some technical problems that we are having with the Mentimeter. So I would maybe wait 1 minute that in the background we are solving this. Yes, so this is the list of research questions that we identified as important, and we wanted to ask you to vote and indicate how relevant they are. And maybe you can have a quick look at the 8 questions. Since we have the questions in front of us, would anyone like to have a comment about one of these questions and see how relevant they are for the country? We can see one of the questions refers to the plant-soil interactions and how it contributes to the increasing aridity. If someone would like to comment whether it's relevant for the country or not, or something more general, maybe what management approaches help develop forest resilience without compromising their economic, social, and biodiversity-related ecosystem services.
Sorry, there are some questions that I don't know. I mean, exactly what they mean. What is the role of Mediterranean forests in the creation of a rainfall? What does it mean? Are we talking about the feedback of the forests for the atmospheric exchanges, or what is this?
Sorry. Yes, indeed, Rashid. This is about the role of Mediterranean forest in the water cycle on creating rain and contributing to the water cycle around the Mediterranean. And something about the green water and the gray water. These are very specific questions that was raised as scientific question and should be addressed for the Mediterranean.
Yes, clear. Thank you so much, Magda. Thanks.
And then also, I think question number 8 about land abandonment and their impact for future changes. It's very relevant in several countries, and well, I come from Italy, so also in Italy, in the mountain areas is a wide problem, and I saw also some cases in Spain, like in Galician. I don't know if we have any participants that would like to comment on it from these countries. Be nice to hear the perspective.
In fact, these are the research questions that will be included in the Mediterranean Forest Research Agenda. And the objective of the exercise was to see if they are applicable to your country, or how good are they for your country. So just please go through this question and reflect about this. And in a few minutes, we will go to the breakout room, and we will have more time to discuss this question and also discuss about the implementation in your country. So we'll keep the slides for a few minutes more. So please don't take, if you are in Mentimeter now, don't take it. Just reflect on this question for a few minutes. If we have any question, you can raise them now here, but then you can discuss their applicability to your country in the breakout rooms before coming back to the plenary.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for checking the research questions. And as I said before, we will have time to discuss further these questions in the breakout rooms, because we are too many people and it might not be that easy to speak in plenary. So we will directly go there and yes, we have our communication team who is working in the background and will divide us in breakout rooms. There you will have a facilitator who will facilitate the discussion, and we will try to use also a Mentimeter there. There will be one breakout room for our French speakers and the rest will be in English. And yeah, now please. Yeah, sorry, Magda.
Yes, they are ready. C'est bon.
Okay, so you will be automatically sent to the breakout rooms.
Thank you for holding until now. I will share very quickly the results of Menti. So many of the people on the audience are researchers. We have some students, UN agencies, one forest owner, knowing that not everyone replied to this slide for some technical reasons. Then we have the famous question where we have the question about the agenda and how relevant they are for your countries. And we have here, most of them are above the mean values. I think the question about the creation of rainfall is the one that had the minimum of votes or where they don't agree on it. Anyway, all these results will be discussed during the last event, the forum in Barcelona. Concerning the challenges that your country will face in addressing these questions, we can see here that insufficient funds are one of the top answers. Then we have the regulatory framework. For this one, also last week when you were discussing about multiple ecosystem services, also the regulatory framework was appearing as a good reason to refrain working on this question. But also what's interesting is this question about being part of a network. So this is something we can work on by bringing more people together and allowing them to access to the right networks to do this work. As additional question, like we have many, so we will analyze these additional question and see if they fit in a way or another and the challenges that we address for our agenda. And again, we will reply back during the forum. I would like to tell you that what do you have here, all the notes we took during this webinar will be put on the slides of this Miro, and then they will be shared. They will be shared, as Sarah told you this morning, on EFIMED website. We will send you also this link so you can come back and see the results. So I don't know if anyone has something to say, particularly to discuss what happened. Maybe we can have feedback from the different groups. Can see. Hiba, do you want to begin, or Leila, who is ready to comment?
Yeah, I would like first to say that it was a very rich and fruitful discussion, and I would like to thank everyone who took the part in this debate. So in the breakout rooms that I facilitated, we had researchers based in Spain and Italy, and they highlighted some challenges related to the lack of management through the fragmentation of forest ownership and the fact that forest owners are not fully included in the management plans. And also the fact that the values of the products is not cultivated or it's cultivated, but at the low level. And also they highlighted the point of the rural abandonment and increase in forest cover in Italy, which is an issue compared to the eastern part of the Mediterranean, which we face like forest deforestation and reduction. Also, they highlighted an interesting point is the fact that forest management is not perceived positively from the public due to the lack of communication between the forest managers and the public. So whenever a silvicultural issue is done on the ground, they perceive it negatively. And also they highlighted the role of EFIMED to bring the knowledge to the places that most needed. And I'd like to thank them all.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Thanks, Hiba. I will take over again. Now my microphone is working. So maybe Leila, Leila, do you want to give us?
Yes, sure. Mustafa and I were in the French-speaking breakout room, and it was all made of students. So definitely one of the biggest problems that we have is academic, where forestry is not considered as a major in most universities. You have to study something else and then get your master's in forestry. And even curriculum are sometimes outdated, which leads to a lack of expertise. Another challenge was the different interests and the lack of common ground between stakeholders, which makes it difficult to build a unified strategy in most cases. Also, Mustafa highlighted that in Benin, there is a lack of policies and a regulatory framework. We also got to discuss the key research questions identified in the research agenda. And we found that the question related to what conservation actions and management approaches can improve resilience sort of covers all other questions. So this is mainly the one that we all agreed that is the highlight of all other questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Leila. I think now we can go to Eduard group and then Federica. Or maybe Federica, do you? Ah, no, perfect. Eduard is coming.
I was in the same group as Hiba.
Okay, sorry for that. Perfect. Then I think we can go to Federica. We had a very small group.
Yeah, we had a very small group and a very small conversation for some technical issue. But one of the problem or challenge that comes up was related to lack of communication between science and stakeholders. So the fact that on one hand there is not a link, a direct link. From the academia to forest manager, private forest owner, and also public forest owner that have to take decision on how to manage forests. And on the other hand, also um, uh, how the suggestion or the guidelines are written and structures, it is often too complicated to be understood by somebody that doesn't have a strong academic and scientific background. And yeah, these are the main challenges that were out of the those that were being named by the Mentimeter.
Thanks, Federica. We had also another group, the last one from Rea. Rea, would you like to give us a quick?
Yes, hi. Yeah. So, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for this fruitful and interesting discussion. So, the main challenges that were raised during this breakout room, mainly they align with the results of the mentee, and we had two new challenges as well that were raised. So, we mentioned the lack of policies, especially when the lands are on private land. And we also mentioned the lack of funds, national and international funds. But for the new challenges that were raised, there is clearly a breach between the knowledge and the strategies and the actual implementation and the practices on the ground. So this is one of the main challenges. And the second one was how to encompass the forest conservation with bioprevention and bioeconomy, since now there are high pressure on implementing bioeconomy as well. So yeah, this is it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rhea. And thanks everyone, the facilitators and the participants to the breakout rooms. It was very nice to hear your discussion points. And I will directly hand over to Magda, who will conclude the webinar. And thanks everyone for participating from my side.
Thank you very, very much, Cecilia, to facilitating this webinar. We have a lot of bumps today, but I think to be resilient, we should keep going, like our forest, and like what we can say that this forest resilient theme is really in the heart of everything. We will see at the end after talking. In order to provide multiple ecosystem services, we need to manage forest for resilience in order to have support bioeconomy or other benefits or other ecological services, as we can say. We should have resilient forest. So the theme of management of forest for resilience will keep coming, and you will see it as cross-cutting issue at the end during our forum end of November. So thank you for being with us today, and we see each other on the next two webinars and in the forum, hopefully. Thank you for participating, and thank you also, special thanks for the guys from Mediterranean News Task Force, SylvaMed, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.